companies, especially big companies, they have cadence. Like, for example, Samsung has a weekly cadence of weekly meetings and weekly meeting notes. So for a simple decision making, you have wasted 4 weeks if you have to go 2 levels up. But once you have that, uh, OKR framework and Get Job can be the perfect tool for you. When the company is small, it's all about execution, and the execution comes down to the founders,
Yeah.
what attitude they bring in together, because you have to uh, come over a lot of small everyday problems. How do you catch problems early on? So his OKR framework, the software has all these, uh, hooks in place, which will boil up potential problems in critical areas very quickly. And ever since I moved on the business side and talked to the customer, understand their problems and help translate those into the engineering solutions. If you're just doing a technical solution for something fancy, it's just a hobby.
Hello and welcome to another super fantastic episode of Joy of Performing podcast. What is the point of living if we cannot enjoy every moment? And since most people today are spending a lot of time at work once they have a degree or once they get out of college, or even in college, even in high school, people have started working and making money. So if you don't enjoy doing that, what's the point? Joy of Performing was a company started with this particular motive. They want to bring joy at your workplace, at your desk. The only way to do it is if you find purpose, and the way to find purpose is by setting the right goals. Today, we have with us a subject matter expert at many levels. We have with us Hrishikesh Sathawane, who is aced in the hardware and software industry for over 20 years. He's got some of the biggest labels on his resume: Toshiba, Western Digital, Samsung, and now he is making a change in the startup world by being a mentor and advisor to startups in these spaces. And also, he has taken special interest in a startup, Joy of Performing, which is our company, and this is our podcast. We are so fortunate to have Rishi on this podcast. Let's pick his brain on why he thinks JOP or Job is a company worth looking at, and why OKRs. You can do anything in the world. There are hundreds of things you can pursue to be successful in your startup, in your workplace. Why does he back OKRs and productivity strategies used by JOP? Rishi, welcome to Joy of Performing podcast. We're truly very honored to have you here.
Well, thank you, Vida, for having me here. It's pleasure to be here and talking about the thing that I love the most. I was an engineer, as I said, as you mentioned before. I was a hardware engineer, but ended up doing a lot of software. But something was missing. Engineers always love and get excited by solving problems, but those problems have to be some business problems. If you're just doing a technical solution for something fancy, it's just a hobby. Um, and ever since I moved on the business side and talked to the customer, understand their problems and help translate those into the engineering solutions, um, uh, you know, there's always one thing in everybody's mind. How do you create growth? How do you create growth in revenues or some other business metrics? So over the last many years, when I was in the CTO office at Toshiba or pathfinding at Samsung, the objective was always growth. Uh, so I knew three ways to create growth. One of them is to you have the same product, you chase new markets. The second
Yeah.
way to create growth is you work with the fascinating startup scene in the Silicon Valley. Identify where is the synergy between what they do and what your goals are. Come up with
Yeah.
some new solution, chase new markets, and that's another way to create a growth. And the third is very simple. It's very internal focused, and that is you have a market, and then you have internal processes set up. You make sure those two align. You'll be surprised. In big companies, the processes, the market change, but the processes don't, and that creates friction. So that's another way to unlock growth in a big company. When I met
Fantastic.
Gaurav, the CEO of Good Job, I discovered a new way to create growth, and that is simply to align. your workforce to what your goals that you're already defining. Uh, it's
Right.
kind of similar to the third one I mentioned, but not really. It
Mm-hmm.
goes deeper than that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like a boat that everybody's trying to row in a different direction, in whatever they think is the direction, but they're not aligned. And so you don't go anywhere, or you don't go quite as far in the direction you want to go. But when uh, the corporate goal and the individual goals are aligned and they know what it is at a very deep level, at a very action item level,
Yeah.
then there's only one way you can go, is to go in the direction of whatever your goal is. It may be revenue goal, it could be a bunch of other metrics, like customer wins or whatever it is. And uh, OKR framework truly enables you to get more growth out of your existing resources, and and that's why I call it a low hanging fruit. You're not spending anything, you're not making any major changes, you're just making sure everybody's alive. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I think in this fast-paced world, people are caught up with a lot of shiny objects. As soon as they see something new, or there is a job or task which is imminent, they will jump to it without doing deep work. I think productivity hacks are all about doing deep work, as in you're aligning the entire organization. That requires some sort of deep work, and this is great way of achieving productivity. So on that, why do you pick JOP? There are a lot of players in this market. There's Lattice, there's Workboard, there's so many people. I think Microsoft has their own internal OKR platform. Google made OKRs popular. They adapted to John Doerr's framework. Why did you back job? What was different? What was the factor, just differentiating?
So first, it's knowing people behind it. You
Yeah,
know, when the company is small, it's all about execution, and the execution comes down to the founders,
yeah,
what attitude they bring in together, because you have to uh, come over a lot of small everyday problems. Um,
right.
and so when I met Gaurav through introduction by a mutual friend of mine from my hostel back in IIT days, um, uh, I quickly realized that, yeah, this is a man who is a serial entrepreneur. He has made venture successful before, and he definitely has the right mindset to make this venture a success as well. And I mean, he has already done that. So in India, they recently acquired Birla as a customer. That's a big deal.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and being India centric initially, um, of course, there is a little bit of a cultural clash or
Yeah.
change culture between India and US, and they're trying to come to the US. So you need to orient yourself a little bit. And I think I found that I can definitely add that value. Having come from India, have lived in America for 20 plus years, almost 25 years. Um, I think I can definitely add a lot of value to the company and take it to the next level. Um,
Fantastic.
so that's
Awesome.
one aspect. The
Mhm.
other aspect is what Job is doing is not just OKRs. They have definitely gone beyond that. It's not just alignment of the goals, but also how do you improve the productivity of everybody
Yeah.
in doing and going towards that goal? How do you catch problems early on? So his OKR framework, the software has all these uh, hooks in place which will boil up potential problems in critical areas very quickly. Uh, and I think that also is very important. If there is a problem, you want to know it today. You don't want to wait until the quarter end.
Yeah. Fantastic. And you s- you seem to have invested in a startup in India. Of course, they're headquartered in the US as well. What I felt was you saw some elements have been de-risked by JOP, and you just mentioned that they've gone beyond OKRs. So, what kind of risk do you think JOP has mitigated? I know that investors look for, is the tech risk being mitigated? Has the market risk been mitigated? Here in such a new kind of productivity startup, what do you think JOP is mitigating very well? What kind of risk have they gone past to get somebody like your investment and advisory and your time?
Sure. So OKR at the high 10,000 foot level is a very simple framework.
Yeah,
John Doerr wrote a whole book on it, going into a lot of details. But this
yeah,
is, reading the book and understanding that is like reading a book on swimming. You know, by reading
yeah,
a swimming book, you cannot just jump into the water and swim. This is
yeah,
where a swim coach is really extremely helpful, and that's what Job also does. They have service programs that will help the company or the customer for whatever time they need. And that is, I think, very important because any tool can be dangerous if you don't know how to use it correctly.
yeah.
Or it
Mm-hmm.
can be useless.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't even know the functionality. You talk
yeah,
about Hammer and simple tools like that. Those are easy to understand. You can do it on your own. But let's take an example of Photoshop. You can pay an expensive license fee to get a Photoshop, but there are so many features you have to learn. Uh,
yeah.
I wouldn't say Jobs OKR framework is that complicated, but you still can do a lot better if you have that coaching to make sure
Fantastic.
you are on the right track.
Also, since they are getting good traction in the Indian market for mid-sized businesses, that speaks a lot about how well they have shown results in their clients' workplace, or they've driven outcomes. So that's a great indicator of the product being de-risked. Um, with that, let's look at a couple of stories which you felt drove home the point for you with respect to OKRs. I know you work with a lot of startups. You're an advisor, you're a mentor. You work at FalconX, Techstars, and Plug and Play. And I'm sure there is something you saw. There's some story which hit home the point, which you probably want to share with people, why you believe in this philosophy. It's not easy to teach a startup to adopt goal setting because it's very dynamic. The waters keep changing all the time. So is there any one particular story which kind of drove home the point for you?
You know, OKRs is not necessarily the right framework for everybody. I mean, if you don't even have a product market fit, uh, you're constantly changing direction. In that
Correct.
case, this would be an overkill. But
Yeah,
once you have that product market fit and you're ready to scale, then
yeah,
you want all your attention going in one direction. And after
yeah,
that, it doesn't matter how big your ship is. Once you have that, uh, OKR framework and GetJob can be the perfect tool for you. Um,
yeah,
I mean, I wish I knew about it when I was at Samsung. You
yeah,
know, uh, we
yeah,
we did give try to OKR, but we didn't really know how to make it work.
yeah.
uh,
No, I heard this about many agile tools as well. Like, if people don't manage the dashboard, it's of no use having the tool. That's how I see it. Yeah. So this is
then it
awesome.
becomes it becomes a burden to maintain yet another
Becomes a
thing.
word.
It's not really helping you go in a particular direction.
So on that note, what are your top three hacks for getting the maximum productivity out of OKRs? Since you've seen real life experiences in Samsung of things not working, you meet somebody like Gaurav, who is the founder of Job, and you see that he's pushing things forward. What do you think are the top three productivity hacks to make OKRs work? I know you mentioned product market fit should have been there for a startup or even for a corporate team. So that's a good indicator of starting OKRs in your company. What else should be there? What else makes it joyful to use this tool?
I would say for any company, start small. You don't have to do a company-wide implementation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Start with a POC, uh,
Mm-hmm.
learn from it, and that's where JOP can also help. They'll help you customize it for your own needs. Uh, do some pilot runs initially and create success there, and then it becomes easier to, get a buy-in from the other executives and grow and get a bigger ship to align together. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that would be number one. Um, the other is take advantage of those early signals. Um, this particular software from this company has made it really easy to uh, figure out why a particular metric at a higher level is not moving. You can double click at each level and go and figure out, hey, some task is not getting done. And
Correct.
a senior executive can skip orders of communication to get to
Yeah.
the bottom of the problem.
I
So,
like this point particularly because the most common complaint I've heard working with large companies is things take forever.
yeah.
If you send the email, you get response after 3 weeks because it is going through many layers and you're stuck in some layer and you have no clue. But getting to see where you are in the process is very, very useful, and I think it sets everything in the right course. You know exactly where to push the needle, where to move the needle, right?
And I do not want to underestimate this problem. Companies, especially big companies, they have cadence. Like, for example, Samsung has a weekly cadence of weekly meetings and weekly meeting notes, updates to your boss and everything. And uh, in those kind of environments, somebody bubbles up a problem, the boss comes to know about it a week later.
Yeah,
The boss will take some. If it has to go up, there's another week, and
right.
the solution, or the decision from upstairs can also have a weekly cadence in that situation. So for a simple decision making, you have wasted 4 weeks if you have to go 2 levels up.
Absolutely. And I also feel that I heard this complaint, I can't mention from whom, from a very popular CEO in the Valley, that they went and built the wrong product because were not in touch with the sales organization, which had completely diversified. They had completely different dashboards. So they built a different product. So why did you build a product when there was no requirement in the first place? This is like
Hmm.
when you're so massive, there is no alignment at all. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think at
that's
that.
called the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing in a big company.
Exactly, exactly. So do you think it is scalable to a big company as well? Like a company with more than, let's say, 2000 employees? Do you think OKRs will work at that level?
It works for Google.
Yes, it works. Absolutely. No, that's a
You
great
know,
answer.
I'm sure JOP can do a much better than what Google has, but yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think there is any limitation how big it can get.
awesome. No, that's a great example. I didn't think about that, but on that amazing note, is there any takeaway for our audience from this podcast you want to share about joy of performing or about generally best practices in this productivity space? Anything you want to let them know before we wrap up?
Sure. I have helped companies find growth opportunities, and I would do, double line, bold line, italics, everything on this point that this OKR framework is the lowest hanging fruit. Imagine if you have to chase new markets, you have to find new influencers, new dynamics of that market, maybe hire a sales team to chase that market. It's a lot of expense.
Yeah,
Even doing open innovation, you have to create a fund to invest in startups or work together with them, assign people, create like a whole new department of open innovation. For the other restructuring, it could mean letting go of people, it could mean hiring new teams, things like that. All of those involve expenses. This one, the expense is really minimum. Whatever you will pay, get job is like, few dollars per employee per month or something like that. It's not really much. And it will give you a great boost in your growth numbers. And who doesn't like growth numbers, right? There are companies
Yeah,
that have very thin margins, 1 or 2%. Imagine you can double that margin. Or there
yeah,
are fast growing companies that are already growing at, let's say, 40%. And a job can get you to a 60% growing company just by aligning all the goals. And that means a huge thing for growing startups because their next round of financing depends on their growth rates. So you imagine being able to get a couple more $millions in valuation or even more. Uh, and for what? But just working with your existing resources. So I think when you're
that's
thinking
right.
about growth, this is the first thing you should think about.
Yeah, this is amazing. What can we do better with what we have? Once we master that game, we're going to be ready for a bigger game. And
Yeah,
on that
and
amazing,
who
amazing,
knows? Maybe you can get more with your existing team. You don't need to hire more people.
yeah, yeah, that's a great point actually. Probably this is a HR tool, but it's more than HR in many ways. Seems like an HR tool, but really it's not. I think every employee should look at it as their own personal self-improvement tool, and then overall the organization is improving. So on
I
that,
think every VC that is funding Series A, Series B startup should make sure that they're using an OKR tool because that will ensure that their own returns will multiply better.
yeah, absolutely. Because at that scale, I think people are facing growing pains. The founder is not involved directly every day in all departments. They hire people to do it, and they're very careful in hiring because it's founder-led operations are going to the new hire-led operations, and this is a very sensitive phase. So goal
Mhm.
setting will set the course in a lot of ways. That was amazing what you told about sales teams. I heard a lot of pain points from sales teams. Apparently, it's very hard to manage sales teams. So, looks like this is where the magic trick is. So awesome. On that note, Rishi, thank you so much for your valuable time, all these amazing insights which you shared from your industry experience, first-hand experience. I look forward to seeing more amazing insights about OKR from you. Thank you for joining us at the Joy of Performing podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Have a great day.
Awesome.